In a recent interview with Hannity, President Donald Trump and Elon Musk share more details about the lies and corruption within our government. We're also going to talk about the problem with the Democratic Party and its need for reform. We'll cover both of those things in this video, so let's take a look at the interview from last night with Hannity.
In order to save taxpayer money, it comes down to two things: competence and caring.
Right.
And when the president was shown the outrageous bill for the new Air Force One, and then negotiated it down, if the president had not applied competence and caring, the price would have been 50%
Ridiculous.
higher. Literally 50% higher. The president cared, the president was competent, the price was not 50% higher as a result. And so when you add more competence and caring, you get a better deal for the American people.
This is exactly it, right? There's so much corruption in the way that private companies are doing business with the government over the past 4 years, paying out contracts to these companies that are not even remotely worth the amount that they're paying, and paying them far beyond the contract date. And it works to both of their benefits, right? The company receives a large amount of money that is from taxpayer dollars, and then down the road, they pay some of that money back to the politicians in the form of donations in support of the party or the politician. And then everybody's making money off of it. They're essentially extracting money from taxpayers' pockets into the pockets of the CEOs and leaders of these companies and the bureaucrats who are signing off on these policies and these contracts with the companies. And it's complete corruption. It's something that has to stop. This is not okay for, the government and certain companies to be taking our hard-earned money and putting it in their pocket and then lying about it and saying that they're doing these things to create programs that are for our benefit, when it's not. It's really not. It's just for them to get more rich.
He uses the word,
it's
caring.
Yeah.
It's a certain competence, but I think it's more caring than competence.
If you add either ingredient, either competence or caring, you'll get a better outcome. But it stands to reason that if you don't have competence, you don't have caring, you're going to get a terrible deal. And the problem is that the American taxpayers have been getting a terrible deal because look at the last administration. Can any reasonable person say that the last administration was either competent or caring?
But they lied to us and said that Joe didn't have a cognitive decline.
They fully lied.
They said the borders were closed. They said that the borders were secure. They said that, they said Obamacare would save.
They flat out lied.
It flat out lied.
Insane.
The media and the government is flat out lying in order to funnel money from our pockets into their pockets. And it's something that's been going on for a long time. This is not something new. I think this has happened on and off for, a long period of time, but it's gotten to a really extreme point over the past 4 years. And it's only to the detriment of the American people. And it's something that has to stop. We cannot keep allowing these leaders of the country to lie and control the media and spin false narratives, invoking fear and anger into people.
The average American makes $66,000 a year.
Yeah.
Okay? We have $37 trillion in national debt.
And we're spending
now,
$20 million
all the money
on
I'm
Sesame
about to
Street shows in
mention,
Iraq.
And what we're going to scroll on our screen. And all of this is going to foreign
11
countries.
million
It is not
on
being spent here in
trash
America
burning.
for better schools, law and order.
I think the average taxpaying American should be mad as hell.
I don't actually think that people are upset enough about this issue. This is huge. The amount of money that's being funneled into people's pockets and out of the country and into bureaucrats' pockets, both here in the U.S. and outside the U.S., I don't think people are really upset enough about this. And it's really funny in a certain way because Democrats go about every single policy and idea and ideology in a very extremist, overreactive sort of way. Just they're so overreactive to everything. But then I think on the other side, I think Republicans sometimes don't really quite get loud enough or upset enough about certain things. I certainly think that's changing and people are starting to kind of stand up for themselves. But I think in a certain way, people don't actually either know or don't know and just don't get upset enough. We let certain things go on without really caring enough about it to make a big deal out of it. And to me, the spending that USAID has been doing over the past few years and these things are coming out, and I'm not hearing really more about it or more people really being angry or upset, it is kind of crazy to me. I mean, these are millions and billions, possibly up to, $1 trillion worth of taxpayer money that is just being completely stolen. It's crazy.
They actually hide what the real purpose of the spending is.
Sure.
In other words,
these programs are complete
this is
fraud.
a question. How did you decipher? It will say humanitarian blah, blah, blah in Serbia or Afghanistan. We even give money to China, for crying out loud, which I think is nuts.
Or give money to the Taliban.
But money to the Taliban.
Like a lot.
All right, so
I'm like, for what?
But
I want to see the pictures of what they did.
But they try to obscure it, but then you got to the bottom line, which is what I'm now scrolling on the screen, and that is $20 million on a Sesame Street show in Iraq, $56 million to boost tourism in Tunisia and Egypt, $40 million to build schools in Jordan, $11 million to tell the Vietnamese to stop burning trash, $45 million for DEI scholarships in Burma, $520 million for consultant-driven ESG investments in Africa, DEI programs in Serbia. The president's favorite. I'm sure you love that taxpayer money was spent on a DEI musical in Ireland, or a transgender opera in Colombia, or a transgender comic book in Peru.
It sounds like how can these things be real? But this is actually
You can't make this up.
It sounds like a comedy sketch or
I have
something.
20
It's insane.
pages of this.
Right. It's not. It's a list a mile long.
I mean, to me, that's exactly what's going on here, right? Is a lot of these programs, I think, are complete fraud and just straight up lies. I don't even think a lot of these countries are seeing the citizens, at least I should say, probably aren't even really seeing a lot of this money that's being sent there for these programs. These programs are created by bureaucrats here in America, and then we send the money to another bureaucrat in another country. And what do you think happens? I think the leaders of those countries are pocketing that money and kicking some of that money back to previous leaders here in America, and they're essentially pocketing the money. And then really the programs that are being created, frankly, for some of these things that are ridiculous to even be creating programs for, isn't even really happening. It's just a way to lie and funnel money back and forth to each other and extract the money from the American people's pockets and put it into their own. It's complete fraud. And let's say I'm wrong about that part. Let's say it's not fraud. It's still, these programs are not something that I think most American people would want us to be spending our taxpayer money on. These are problems or issues in these other countries, or agendas really are what a lot of these programs are created for, is to push certain narratives and agendas. All of these things are things that other countries should be largely handling for themselves. We should not be spending this much of our taxpayer money on these other USAID programs. I'm not saying we shouldn't be spending any, and we shouldn't care at all about what's going on outside of America. That's certainly not the case. But even if a lot of these programs aren't fraudulent, I still think the amount of money that is being sent for a lot of these extremist radicalized programs is completely out of control.
They want you two to start hating each other, and they try, President Elon Musk, for example. You do know that they're doing that to you.
Oh, I see it all the time. They tried it, then they stopped. That wasn't. They have many different things of hatred. Actually, Elon called me. He said, they're trying to drive us apart. I said, absolutely. No, they said, we have breaking news. Donald Trump has ceded control of the presidency to Elon Musk. President Musk will be attending a cabinet meeting tonight at 8 o'clock. And I say, It's just so obvious. They're so bad at it. I used to think they were good at it. They're actually bad at it, because if they were good at it, I'd never be president. Because I think nobody in history has ever gotten more bad publicity than me. I could do the greatest things. I get 98% bad publicity. I could do, outside of you and a few of your very good friends, it's like the craziest thing. But you know what I have learned, Elon? The people are smart. They get it.
Yeah, they do, actually.
They get it. They really see what's happening.
Yes.
In my opinion, this is a big reason that the Democratic Party has kind of crumbled on itself, is that they're so focused on spinning these narratives and these lies and these things that very clearly aren't true. I think to a large majority of Americans, they can see that a lot of these things and stories that they're being fed by legacy media and by the left wing are largely fabricated or exaggerated or just totally not in line with kind of what the true reality of the situation is. And I think that people, especially now that COVID's over and there's less control by the government of their ability to kind of censor things and keep people kind of indoors and trapped and not having as much control of the way information is spread, is people are now seeing that a lot of these things just aren't true. A lot of the things that the media was telling us when we were all locked down are largely just not true. And I think people are tired of that. People are tired of being lied to. People are tired of seeing things exaggerated. And I think that's a big reason that Trump came out on top during the election.
This whole sort of like, they call it like Trump derangement syndrome. And you don't realize how real this is until like you can't reason with people. So like I was at a friend's birthday party in LA, just a birthday dinner, and it was like a nice, quiet dinner, and everyone was behaving normally. And I happened to mention, this is before the election, like a month or two before, I happened to mention the president's name. And it was like they got shot with a dart in the jugular that contained like methamphetamine and rabies, okay? And they're like, wow! And I'm like, what is wrong? Like, guys, like, you just can't have like a normal conversation. Yeah. And it's like they become completely irrational.
The Democratic Party has fallen out of touch with the American people. The leaders have become so extreme and radicalized and irrational, and you can't, like he said, have a reasonable conversation with people. And this just isn't how normal, everyday, regular Americans are, whether they're Republican or Democrat. I have Democratic friends who we don't necessarily agree politically, but we're still friends. We still get along, and we can agree to disagree, and we can have conversations about things, why they think this and why I think that, and you can talk and be reasonable and have conversations with people. And that's just not the narrative and the way that the Democratic leaders and the party leaders are going about their messaging and their ideologies. They're so extreme and so irrational that normal Democrats, everyday Americans, can't connect with those leaders because their messaging is so far past what's actually reasonable to most people. And this is the big issue. And in my opinion, the reason that the party needs a large amount of change going forward.
Nobody voted for Elon. Well, nobody voted for any of your cabinet nominees. Okay.
Right.
People are dying because of Doge cuts. I'll give you a chance to respond to all that. What Doge is doing is illegal. Elon Musk is more street vernacular for a male body part. It's a constitutional crisis.
Okay. Why are they reacting like this?
Well, first of all, do you give it flying rip, number one? And
well, I guess we must be over the target or doing something right. If like they wouldn't be complaining so much if we weren't doing something useful, I think. What all we're really trying to do here is restore the will of the people through the president. And what we're finding is that there's an unelected bureaucracy. Speaking of unelected, there's a vast federal bureaucracy that is implacably opposed to the president and the cabinet. If the will of the president is not implemented, and the president is representative of the people, that means the will of the people is not being implemented. And that means we don't live in a democracy, we live in a bureaucracy. And so I think what we're seeing here is the thrashing of the bureaucracy as we try to restore democracy and the will of the people.
Two things here that Musk talked about that I want to touch on real quick. And one of them is what he said in the beginning, that why are people so angry? Why are Democrats and the leaders on the left so angry and irrational and calling for constitutional crisis and uprising and trying to kind of invoke people into rioting and we will fight back? These are really extreme views. And why is the messaging and the leadership so angry and extremist? And I think there's a couple things. One, They don't like that Musk and Trump are digging into some of the corruption that has been going on for years now. And two, I think they've just lost touch with how to actually connect and resonate with the American people. And it's like I said before, they're so far beyond the views. It's so extreme and unrational and unrealistic the way they're going about this. And the second thing Musk talked about that I think is important is getting back to restoring, the democracy, the democratic republic that we have here in America, and getting away from bureaucracy and so many political leaders gaining financially and all the corruption from the bureaucracy. I mean, the amount of money from this USAID that I think has been fed into the pockets of these bureaucrats, of leaders, I think not only here in America over the past few years, but, of other countries too. I think a lot of that is a very corrupt system, and it's good that we're trying to get away from that and get back to being a country for the people, for Americans.
This is the opportunity to be transformational and to have, I would argue, the most consequential presidency if we really dig down and do something that had never been done before. And that is get rid of this bureaucracy. And I'm going to get to the specifics. You say the same thing. It's not done yet. And what do you mean by that?
I mean, winning the election is really the opportunity to fix the system. It is not fixing the system itself. So it's an opportunity to fix the system and to restore the power of democracy. And people like. It's funny how often when these attacks occur, the thing that they're accusing the administration of is what they are guilty of. They're saying that things are being done unconstitutional, but what they are doing is unconstitutional.
Yep.
They are guilty of the crime of which they accuse us.
That's always the first thing they do. He's in violation of the Constitution. They don't even know what they're talking. Well,
it's absurd.
Know. It's just a con job. It's a big con job. And they're so bad for the country, so dangerous and so bad. And the media is so bad. When I watch MSNBC, which I don't watch much, but you have to watch The Enemy on occasion, the level of arrogance and cheating.
The lies.
They're just horrible people.
Yeah.
These
They
are
lie.
horrible people.
They tell conspiracy
liars.
theories.
And they start up with the Constitution. They couldn't care less about the Constitution. CNN, likewise. I mean, I watch them asking questions with, the hatred with the. I said, "Why are you asking the question with such anger? You're asking me a normal question, but you see the bias. The bias is so incredible. Those two are bad. PBS is bad. AP is bad. CBS is terrible. I mean, CBS now, they changed an answer. In Kamala, they asked her some questions. She answered them like, a low IQ person, the opposite of him, the absolute opposite. But she gave a horrible answer. They took the entire answer out, and they put another answer that she gave 20 minutes later into the as the answer. I've never even heard of that.
Lie.
I thought I heard of it all.
There's a lot there to unpack to me. I mean, I agree with Elon that I think there's going to be a lot more that comes out of all this. I think we're only scratching the surface in terms of what we're kind of like currently finding in terms of the corruption and the spending. But I think over the next year or two, there's going to be a lot more that comes out. And I think a lot of people are going to get exposed, and there's going to be a lot of kind of backlash and wasteful kind of spending and all these poor policies and programs that have been implemented. I think a lot more is to come. And the other thing too is, like he said, it's the hypocrisy for them to point the finger at the other side, at us, at Trump and Musk and the Republicans, and say, you're the problem, when the reality is they're the problem, right? They're the ones that have created this toxic environment that we're in, both culturally and financially. And it's the level of criticism and anger that they come at Trump with, when really they're the ones that have created all this, is bizarre to me. They're coming out. One of the things right now, a big buzzword or buzz term that they're using right now is constitutional crisis. This is a constitutional crisis, Trump and Musk, and what they're doing is illegal, and we will fight back and all this kind of stuff. And they're trying to create this fear in people and spread anger and anxiety and all this kind of stuff. And they're trying to get people to rise up against Trump and Musk. And it's so toxic for our culture and for our country. And it's not healthy. And part of the problem is it's done with the control of the media. Like they said, all these different networks that are kind of in the government's pocket, just like with the Reuters thing in my last video, the $9 million for large scale social deception. The amount of control that the government and the media over the past 4 years at least have been in bed together, and the government has kind of had control of the media and the narrative. They've been able to spread so much toxicity and fear and propaganda over the last few years that it's something that we really have to be mindful of, particularly around legacy media. And we need to get away from that and get back to normal, regular, hopefully one day unbiased reporting. And then one more clip here from Senator John Kennedy, I think does a really good job summing up what's going on with the Democratic Party right now. Take a look.
I've got a lot of friends who are Democrats, and they haven't asked me for advice, but if I did, I'd tell them, look, you just got to try harder not to suck. I mean, think about it. Over the past 4 years, the Democrats mismanaged Congress, they mismanaged COVID, they mismanaged the economy, they mismanaged inflation, they mismanaged the national debt, they mismanaged Afghanistan. More recently, in their opposition to President Trump and Mr. Musk, the Democrats have chosen to support the bureaucrats and the spending porn over the American taxpayer. Just like they support illegal immigration over the rule of law, just like they support transgender athletes over women's sports.
It's crazy.
Just like they support Hamas terrorists over Israel. All Democrats are not like this, but the party is controlled right now by people who majored in online activism with a minor in puberty blockers. I know these people. They think women, they think men can breastfeed. They're triggered by race. They cry if you use the wrong pronoun. And most fair-minded Americans look at this and they go, these people are about 10 exits past normal. And that's what's killing the Democrats right now, in my opinion.
I think Senator Kennedy does a great job here of kind of summing it up and what's going on with the Democratic Party. The leaders are so far out of touch from reality and so far past what's normal. Everyday Americans, everyday Democrats even, are not as extreme and radicalized as the messaging and ideology that the leaders of the party are using and spreading. It's something that I think the party needs a real large scale change in leadership and ideology and messaging and politics to really recapture their party and the people that have put faith in them in the past. I mean, I think there has to be some sort of change because what they've been doing isn't working. I think leaning on these identity politics and focusing on racism and transgender and all this kind of stuff, it's not going to resonate for the vast majority of Americans. You might be able to rope in kind of the outliers or the most extreme people, but to get the large majority of Americans to kind of align with your party, there has to be some large scale change in leadership and in policies going forward. You cannot continue to try to use this lying and manipulation and fear mongering and media manipulation and all this kind of stuff, not caring about the education system, trying to use the children of our nation and the education to spread propaganda and lies and censorship and all these kinds of things that are so extreme and unrational. I think what Senator Kennedy said, just like I said, really sums it up perfectly. So I want to leave you with this. Let me know in the comments down below. What do you think? Do you think the Democratic Party needs change, needs reform in leadership? And if so, in what ways? What policies or ideas do you think would help the party going forward? I know for me as a Republican, even though I don't agree with, in general Democratic policies or liberal politics, I still think it would be very healthy for our country as a whole if the Democratic Party could be more in touch with reality and more reasonable and really actually focused on the American people. Again, not that I agree with kind of a lot of the general policies that come along with the Democratic Party, but I still think that having the party in a healthier, more reasonable, logical space is to the benefit of the country, regardless of who's in office in the future going forward now in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. I think the party just as a whole needs change. If you guys enjoyed this video and enjoyed my commentary, please do drop a like and also subscribe. And also check out my previous video, which should be coming up next, where I talked about Doge and some of the government spending that Musk and Trump have been looking into.